There we go. Hey, folks. My name is Mark Gostkiewicz. I'm gonna get going with it. Let's see. Welcome to Fungi Frenzy. This is the class where we talk about growing three types of mushrooms that are pretty basic that we can grow outdoors in in our home, not in our homes, but at our homes. And like right here, like this is one that's like I just before class I was like, all right, and I got like little shiitake mushrooms popping up. Now these still need to size up. They're not, I could eat them, but they're just growing on a log, and you can see we'll talk about like how did I set this up? Um, what did I do to get mushrooms that are edible, that are easy to identify, to get them in this log? And here's the thing: this is a log that's a cutoff. Right there is the cutoff from. It's a bigger log typically. So typically 3 feet, 4 feet. It's like we'll get in there. This is actually just like a little sample of what you'd really be growing on outside. We'll get into some of the tools in the chat. I put the links to the handouts for this class and the presentation for this class so that you don't have to like go crazy trying to write things down. I am a flow state of mind presenter, which means that each picture in my presentation triggers a memory of something that I need to talk about. And so I don't always remember to talk about everything. Sometimes the memories don't come to me, so that's why I take the time to type things down. Here, I'm going to share my screen and let's see. Nope, not that one. Let's see. Oh, yeah, this one, this one, this one. Okay. That's not my email. You don't need to see my email and how I got my link for this class. Here we go. So the presentation is a Google slideshow. So it automatically, anytime I make updates to this, you automatically have the best version of it. Same thing with the document. Buried in the document are links. Like the best version of this is not in print, it's digital. So you can click on a video of me doing something. Here, let's get rid of Grammarly on the side. And so I go through, yep, all right, so there's links all the way down here. There's recommended books, and there's more of my videos on YouTube and stuff like that. So I don't have a huge YouTube channel, but the things that I'm passionate about, I curate and make like little videos about. And so mushrooms, I don't make videos all the time. It's like when I have something to say, I make a video about it. And I put it on. So, and then I also got like trusted suppliers and books that go along with this in the handouts. Hey, shameless plug is that, yeah, we do got a website, and we do have like a list of like all the classes that we teach. And if you want to see me like live somewhere, here, look, Bloomfield, there's my public calendar. You can see I'm going to be in Newtown tomorrow teaching a kombucha class. Um, and so you can follow me around and like visit me, where if I'm happen to be near you. And if you can't wait, you can also like buy an on-demand version of this class. I had somebody right before this like buy my chicken keeping class, so I sent her the link to the videos, the handouts, everything that you're going to get to see tonight for free. But she couldn't wait, so she needed it right then on demand. All right, and to get going. So let's dive in. All right, I'm going to make.
Mark, I just want to see, Frank texted, he said, where are the chat shares? He doesn't see them, so let's make sure he sees them.
Yeah, I don't know. You might have to scroll back in the chat. So right where I see your conversation in the chat is back where that would be. It's just a little further back. I don't know how to navigate that. It just might be a scrolling thing. Here, I'm gonna dive in though, content wise. Oh boy, so I am a watercolor. So this is one of the classes that I actually took some time to make some nice illustrations, the ones that I like. And so that's what you're going to see throughout this is that like instead of like this class I'm really proud of because it's like everything is either a picture that I took with my own like phone or camera or whatever, or it's a picture that I painted. And this is like what we're going to learn in this class. We're going to learn the top and the bottom, and then the middle is like advanced that you can do later on. We're going to learn how to make beds of mushrooms that you can just have growing on their own or among your ornamental stuff or in your veggie garden or whatever. We'll talk about that, how to grow mushrooms in your veggie garden. We're going to learn how to like talk about log culture, so focusing on totems for one type of mushroom, but it can be used for several different types. And then log culture that's using other types of other sizes of logs, not so big as the totems, the stacks of logs. And then, here's the thing: is that some mushrooms that are not part of this class, when you dive into this world of growing mushrooms outdoors, you learn that some mushrooms have evolved to grow from rotting wood that's been buried underground, and so like you could take the log culture method that we learned, bury the logs, and grow some mushrooms. So
I just want to stop you because
go for it.
people really want the shares. Can you send them one more time? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. All right, copy,
And
paste,
let's just make sure everybody has them.
and all right. So that's the handouts, and here's the link for the presentation. Yeah, I think. I think it says shared to everyone, so hope they can see it.
Yeah, just let us know.
All right, all
Okay,
right, all right.
yep.
No,
All
that's
right,
fine. That's
excellent.
fine.
Thanks.
Back to screen sharing. Okay. Where? Let's see. There we go. Um, Okay, so we'll talk about using the whole tree from top to bottom. A lot of the mushrooms that we're going to be talking about, they are primary decomposers that are consuming and eating the tissues that are in our local hardwood trees. And so that, all the way from the very tips of these, the branches and everything that can be chipped. We'll look at mushrooms that we can grow on chips, mushrooms that we can grow on limbs, and in that log culture, and then totems. And then every tree has a stump that you could tap into and everything, and grow mushrooms from. So this is what I got going on right now. I always try to update my slides and show, like, this year, this spring, what did I do? Well, you can see the snow was on the ground, but this is, I think, early March. They started doing some tree work around my way, and I was like, all right, yeah, those are some free logs. I'm gonna go pick those up. That's what we want. We want fresh cut lumber for these. We can't do any of our mushroom growing projects with old stuff that's been sitting around for a year or so. The native fungi have already gotten into it. These, however, are fresh cut, and I can bank them in this cold weather through March and everything. And the local fungi aren't going to get their hand, aren't going to get a hold on them. And I kind of got this clock that's ticking away. And if I wait too long, then native fungi will get a hold of them. Right now, I can, like I'm looking at like inoculating these by the end of April or early May. I don't want to like wait any longer than that. And so yeah, so I got a whole stack of logs. I got to cut these down into smaller chunks. How small? Well, I mean, I used to like moving around logs that were 4 feet long. There was a good amount of biomass per log, but now I'm like, oh man, my back hurts. I like to cut them down to 2 or 3 feet each. It's just a heck of a lot easier on my body. And I'd rather work with them in smaller sections than in larger sections. Yeah, another thing that I did this spring is, I went up to where is this? This is I think it's Vernon, Pleasant View Farm, and I drove up with my trailer, went on the scale. They loaded up some straw, put those huge 4 stringers of straw on the back of my trailer. I went and I weighed again, and I brought the straw to my garden and laid it out. Now, so here's the thing: is that all of this is now part of my no-till gardening system. Is that, so I have compost and manure that had been spread underneath this, and now this is also an ideal growing condition to grow mushrooms in that garden bed. I can pull back the straw and plant my little transplants. It's a whole nother thing that I teach and everything. Is like how to do no-till gardening. So I have a weed-free garden, but the other thing is that I get mushrooms growing in my garden. We'll see how that works. So part of this is to show, like, spring right now. This is a time where I'm banking this material, either logs or straw that are my growing medium. And another thing that I could be banking is hardwood wood chips, not pine bark mulch or cedar bark mulch or pine or hemlock chips, not softwood chips. Hardwood chips could be another thing that I'm banking. I'm not though. If I see somebody doing tree work down the road and they're chipping some hardwood trees, I'm gonna give them my card and be like, "Hey, go dump those in my yard. I'd like to grow mushrooms in those." So anyway, so those are things that I'm doing. This all fits in. So growing mushrooms fits in with the 8 layers of a food forest. So within your own yard, you can use multiple layers of harvesting the sunlight and tapping into the nutrients in your ground. This is something to totally look into, where you're not just growing one type of crop here and another type of crop here. I'm growing on the beds underneath my orchard trees. I'm growing raspberries and rhubarb and asparagus and grapes underneath my orchard trees, but I've also got mulching the whole thing is wood chips that are growing mushrooms. This fits within that. Now, here's my property. Um, so let's see, is this one? This one's not the time lapse one. This is just a snapshot a couple years ago. And here's what you'll see. The outline. So there's my house. There's a greenhouse. Actually, that's been taken down now. I got a new little greenhouse, a smaller one, but it's nicer. This is my garden, so that gets covered in straw. And you see this line here, and this line here, and these lines here, and these lines. Those are all wood chip beds in where my orchard trees are. You can see orchard tree, orchard tree, orchard tree, orchard tree. So pear, 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 Asian pear, peach, 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 apples, 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 apples. I got, all around the property. It's hard to see them all, but there's about 50 trees. And planted in these rows are berries, but also mushrooms that are growing. And down here, over here, right by the road. Why did I keep it by the road? This is my stack of where my mushroom logs are growing. It's at the edge of the woods. It's not in direct sunlight. It's not in the woods. It's at the edge of the woods. So I have easy access to it, but it's still kind of shaded. I'm not putting this in a swampy area. There is a swampy area behind my house. Like a little stream flows back here. I'm not putting them there because these mushrooms have not evolved to grow in swampy areas. They've grown in deciduous hardwood tree forests. And so that's where I'm putting those logs, at the edge of that deciduous forest where they get dappled sunlight, not complete darkness. Some people are like, oh, do you bring the logs in the winter? No, no, no. Everything's outside. Everything in this class that we're going to talk about is about growing mushrooms outside. Now, I have a stack that's at the edge over here. I have them stacks of mushroom logs in places where I frequently walk. Back here by my woodworking shop, I frequently walk. And over here by the road is where I drive in and out every day. And I can take a look and see, oh my God, are those like mushroom logs, like popping with mushrooms? I'm going to have to harvest in a couple days, or get the harvest in a couple days. Why is this not? Oh, I don't know why that's not moved. Oh, there we go. There we go.
Okay.
Sorry. It wasn't advancing the slide like I wanted to. No, it's still not. Okay. There we go. All right. So what's a mushroom? And so I've got this little infographic here, of the mushroom life cycle. So in nature, there are mushrooms that are already existing, fungi that are already existing, and the fungi have these fruiting bodies that scatter spores. Those spores, just like sperm and egg in humans, they're different, but it takes two. It takes two to make a unique fungi. Those spores have to land, and one spore on its own can't create a new fungi. It has to mate with another fungal spore. And so they land on some sort of food source. They digest that food source and they create a little colony. And that colony gets bigger and bigger and bigger and fully colonizes a log or that growing media. It could be the straw, the wood chips, the whatever. It fully colonizes it. Once the fungi is living in that, through and through, there's it now has a critical mass and it has a food supply that it can use to fruit. And usually there's a temperature and a moisture trigger for each type of mushroom. Some different fungi. um, so I'm going to go back and forth, and I'm going to use the word fungi and mushroom interchangeably. Just forgive me, okay? I'm not a scientist. Like, I'm a farmer, and I know that we eat the mushroom, which is part of the fungi, and the whole thing is a fungi. Just forgive me if I misuse the terms. I still know what I'm talking about as far as growing them, okay? But I'm not so ignorant to not to to know that mushrooms, when I call this mushroom life cycle, it should be like a fruiting mushroom, a fungi life cycle. Anyway, here's the thing. What we do is we bypass this spore thing. We end up drilling into the log, putting in microcolonies into the log, and that log gets fully colonized by our edible strain before and it outcompetes the native fungi that are trying to work in there. So we put in a critical mass that's bigger, outcompetes it, our edible fungi fruit, and we harvest them. And so we kind of bypass this stage in here. That's what we're going to learn how to do. Um, Okay, so yeah, in nature, there are lots of different types of mushrooms. I'm not going to go into names of them or anything, but just going around and hunting and look at mushrooms. These are all like little pictures of ones that I found. Some of them, they survive on, like, this is like a living birch tree that has a mushroom, like a parasitic fungi growing out of it and fruiting. This one is an oyster mushroom growing on a log. And what you'll notice here is that the oyster is a primary decomposer. It's one of the first things. This mushroom is one of the ones that we're going to learn how to grow. It is native to this area. It's native to, like, it's like abundant throughout the whole world, except Antarctica. But anyway, oyster mushrooms are primary decomposers. So this one, as a parasitic one, is trying to, like, take over and eat the tree while it's still alive. This one waits until the tree is dead. And so does this one. This is turkey tail. We're not going to learn how to grow this one. Heck, just go in the woods and you can find turkey tail or versicolor out in the woods on your own. It does have some lookalikes, so you gotta, but it is one that's used like medicinally. People aren't eating this, but they're making tinctures out of it. I make tinctures out of it. I think this is old man of the woods. This old mushroom and everything was growing out of this old punky log. So this is an example of a mushroom that's not a primary decomposer, but it's a secondary or tertiary decomposer. Something else, other fungi came in and got some of the best sugars and everything right out of this log, decomposed it to a point where now this mushroom could work its way in. So here's the thing. The mushrooms that you get at the grocery store, like the portobellas and the cremini mushrooms, those are composting mushrooms. Those are mushrooms that live in compost. They are like tertiary, they are like end stage decomposers. That's not what we're learning to grow. We are learning to grow fungi that produce mushrooms on material that's relatively newly dead. So a newly dead tree or newly dead straw. So that's what we're learning to grow in this class, not stuff that, like, that's composting like this, although that's wicked cool to see that kind of coral mushroom. All right, I'm going to move ahead. This, oh my God. So this picture right here, you see that white fungal tissue. This is in, so I pull back the straw in my garden bed and I see this. Not only do I see a composting worm in there, that composting worm is, here's the thing, worms don't eat dirt. All right, worms do ingest dirt, but what are they eating? Worms are eating fungal tissue and bacteria. They're eating fungi and bacteria, and they're pooping out any dirt that happens to get in them and any other, like, tissue that they can't, like, fibrous tissues that they can't necessarily digest and process. They're eating bacteria and fungi. Me, I am planting, literally inoculating my straw in my garden with an edible fungi for me that will fruit and produce mushrooms for me, but it's also decomposing the straw, making the straw a food source. It's turning the straw into fungal tissue. The worms are eating the fungal tissue and they are dropping their castings and pooping and multiplying in my garden bed, making the nutrients bioavailable to my plants that I'm trying to grow. This is one of those things where it's like, you need to be doing this. You want to, like, organically garden and everything at your house. This is the way to do it. This is organic fertility, like like at home, by having this process of, like, the worms are feeding off the mushroom. I'm eating the mushrooms. Everything's feeding my plants. My God. All right. So here's the other thing. Um, this is a picture of what somebody sent to me. So we'll see this one again later. This is a mature totem. Somebody left my class with a bag of spawn, and they're like, oh my God, we had a log that we just took the tree down. We're gonna make a totem." And this is exactly what they did. So we'll talk about the plastic bag and this bit of cardboard and a brick that's at the top. But look at this. They pulled back the plastic bag and they said, Mark, how's this doing?" And I said, "My God, that's amazing. Can I use that picture in my class?" Because what we see here is that they cut this log into rings, 3 rings, And in between, they put fungi in there. Do you see how the fungi is growing on the outside of the bark? If it's growing on the outside of the bark, that means under the bark, it's already connected. The fungi that was here connected to the fungi that's up here. Now it's one entire living organism. You take me and you chop me up, I don't get to grow back like this, but fungi does. Fungi are more closely related to us than we are related to plants. We, you know, there's some cool stuff about fungi and their relation to the animal kingdom. It's not the same, different kingdom, but anyway. Yeah, and this is what it's all about. Even this piece, which like I cut off of a log that I was like sending to a friend of mine in the mail, and I cut off this piece of log, and this little hunk that I cut off so I could get the log to fit in the box and go in the mail. This thing's still fruited. Oh my God. So anyway, now I do. This is what my refrigerator in the basement looks like in the spring. I'm storing mushroom spawn in the refrigerator. Now, you as the home grower, you're probably only going to have 1 or 2 bags of this that you might be storing in the back of your refrigerator, just waiting until you're ready to do a project. All right. You're probably not going to dedicate a whole refrigerator to it. Me, I'm dedicating a whole refrigerator because I teach these classes. I bring the bags with me and I sell the bags, not really to make a profit, but just for the encouragement of like, hey, you want to start the project? Here, I paid for the shipping, I paid for the bag. You pay me just a couple bucks more and you can have it. A lot of these from the suppliers, they're sent like you pay like $30 in shipping, whether you're buying 1 bag or whether you're buying 8 bags. So it makes sense for me to buy the 8 bags, pay the $30 shipping, and then reduce that shipping cost for other people. Anyway, here's my point is that this can stay in the refrigerator for about 6 months before you start a project. So there's some longevity here. This is what I'm starting my fungal projects with. And oh my God. Yeah, this is what like harvests. My God, this is shiitake mushrooms. I love shiitakes. You're going to see lots of pictures of shiitakes because it is a staple in my household. I dehydrate them, I powder them, I put them in my kids' tacos. They now know that that's Dad's secret ingredient in his tacos and in my soups. Every week we're eating turkey soup from the turkeys that we had here at the house with cabbage that we grew and with shiitake mushroom powder in the mix again, and then other spices that that we don't grow. Oh my gosh! All right, you can look at this in a little more detail later. This is from Field and Forest, one of the suppliers that I really recommend that you go to. They are a mom and pop organization. They're linked in the handouts. And so this is just the general process of like the what you're going to be doing. There's going to be a time after you set everything up. There's all this front loaded work of getting the stuff, media preparation. You're getting logs or you're getting wood chips or straw or whatever. You're gathering, and then you have a day where you inoculate things, and then you just let it sit for a chunk of time called a spawn run. And so for me, with a lot of my projects, you just like you do it in one weekend, 1 day of the weekend, one afternoon of 1 day of the weekend, and that's it for the whole mushroom growing thing. The rest is just waiting for it to inoculate and to fully colonize the media, and then just waiting for the temperature and moisture triggers to start fruiting. Um, you are likely going to be somebody. This is again from Field and Forest. This is not an all inclusive mapping out of tree species and mushroom species. This is just what they've experimented with and have found successful. Look at this, the blue stars here. So if I want to grow shiitakes, I could grow them on any of these species of wood, but the best one's going to be oak. That's what they're telling us. So you're either going to be the type of person who's like, I want to grow this mushroom. So you're then going to be like, I want to grow lion's mane. That's not part of this class, but maybe you want to do it. So you dial in and you find somebody who can get you some beech, American beech, or get you some sugar maple. All right, because those are going to be some of the best ones that grow that type of mushroom. Each one of these types of mushroom has evolved in some particular type of forest. All right, so a maple forest, an oak forest, where like all the trees are nearly the same thing, and so they've evolved in that. So you want to feed them their primary food source. Now, here's the other thing: you might have a tree that's gotten taken down. You're like, well, what can I grow on it? And and so you start looking at this, and a friend of mine, what did he have? What did John have? John had aspen. All right, where is it? Aspen right here. He had aspen, and he was like, "Hey, Mark, do you have any oyster spawn? It says aspen's amazing at growing. It says that it's a great one for growing oysters." I was like, yeah. Got it back in my fridge. I gave it to John, and John inoculated those aspen logs that he had cut down. And they weren't that thick either, but he was like, "Oh my God, this is the best fruiting of oysters I've ever had." And it's because he did a proper pairing of a tree to be decomposed with its primary decomposer. So anyway, you can look at this chart later. Again, you're either going to be like starting with I want to grow this or I have this. All right. Now, again, that's for log culture. Log culture. We also talk a bit right now about like when do you get some, all right, when can you harvest logs? This is not about straw. This could be about wood chips. But it's mostly about logs. So you can get wood chips kind of at any time of the year. And when you get wood chips, they're taking like so many parts of the tree and chopping them up, the very tips of the tree. There's lots of sugars pushed out and the leaves are getting chipped up and everything. So you don't really need to worry about this. However, right now, if you drive around, are we starting to see trees budding and getting those big red buds? This is about the end. This is about the end of the time to get logs for inoculating. All right. Right around this time, the trees are taking energy. The maple sap's running everything. They are trying to take energy that have been stored in the wood tissues over the winter and push it out to the buds for growth. So what does that mean? Well, if you're trying to grow mushrooms, fungi on logs, and the logs have not been stripped but have been stunted in the amount of sugars that are in their tissues now because it's elsewhere in the tree, well, that's one of the worst times to harvest trees. So I'm not saying that you can't. I'm saying, hey, do you know a place where in the winter they did some cutting and felling of trees for road work, and are those trees still there? The native fungi haven't gotten a hold on them really yet because they've been in the winter. The native fungi has been kind of dormant. Everything's waking up now, so the clock is ticking. If you leave this class and you're like, "Oh my God, I know that there were trees that were cut in December or January somewhere," those trees have been banked, and those are good ones that you could probably still use. Now, trees that were cut maybe last fall, all right, October or whatever, the fungi might have gotten a small hold on them, and those trees are starting to wake up. Not the trees, not the logs, the fungi starting to wake up, and they might actually be colonizing those logs. So you don't want to use things that are too old. So here's the thing. It's like, what's the right at the get-go here, it's talking a little bit about what's our timeline. I have this typed out in the handouts, but if you're taking notes, here, I'm just gonna escape out of this, stop the share, just go to my stupid face. All right. So there is a bit of a timeline for logs. Um, every tree when it's standing has so when it's alive, when that tree is alive, the sap has antifungal and microbial enzymes coursing through that tree, protecting it from as its immune system from invader fungi. When you cut that tree down, those enzymes stay active. They stay active. Like, so if I were to like try and inoculate that tree the same day that I cut it down, it's going to absolutely fail. I've done that. I've done that mistake. I've cut trees down and been like, "Oh my God, John, you're my mushroom buddy. Let's go inoculate these oak logs that I just cut down." We put the spawn in, and the complete project failed because the enzymes were fresh in the tree, and I didn't know that. It was early on before I'd read a bunch of books and like learned about the process. So for you, let's accelerate it. 2 weeks. Wait at least 2 weeks from when the tree was cut for those enzymes to break down and not be active anymore. How long is too long to wait when the temperatures are where they are now? Now the clock is ticking. Winter, ground's frozen, clock's not ticking. The logs can stay on the ground, and the clock doesn't start ticking until sometime here in March. All right. Um, if you were to cut a tree today, wait 2 weeks from now to when you can inoculate it, and then you've got from when it was cut, I say 6 weeks to make sure that you finally finished. So basically, 2 weeks go by, you got another 4 weeks to be like, all right, let's order the spawn, let's get my friends together, let's do this mushroom growing project. This is all for logs, logs, logs. So this is not to get anybody down being like, oh man, I'm not going to get any logs. I'm not going to grow anything now. Don't worry. We're going to jump into wine caps and how you can grow those in your garden like this summer right now. Don't worry about the logs. Later on in the season, bank some logs or just pay attention or be like, oh my God, so and so had some tree work done. Hey, can you dump those logs here? Can you bank those logs? Or my point is wait 2 weeks after when it was cut up until 6 weeks you want to get that. Could you push it to 8? Yeah, you probably could push it 8 weeks from when it was cut to do so. But what you're risking is you're risking that the native fungi will get a hold of that log, get, and that your fungi will be competing with the native fungi over resources, and yours may win out at the end of the day, but they will have lost some food to the native fungi that had gotten a temporary hold on it. Okay, want to set you up for success. So that's why I recommend that 2 to 6 week window to get your projects done with logs. That also holds for tree stumps and for yeah, the totems, logs of any size. Wood chips though, wood chips have got a little. It's kind of because of what we're. All right, let's go back to the presentation. All right, yeah, it's better if we just talk about things as things pop up in the slideshow. There we go. All right. So anyway, so here's the thing. Once the trees start to photosynthesize in the summer, their leaves are out and they're starting to bank energy, getting ready for fall and winter, that's when you could start harvesting trees intentionally. But I'm not saying go out and get your chainsaw. I'm saying, hey, there's plenty of trees that get taken down in ice storms, winter storms, hurricanes. You don't have to break out the chainsaw yourself. Make friends and call up a local landscaper who's taking these things down anyway. All right, first mushroom. First mushroom. Oh my gosh, King Strophoria. All right, wine caps. This right here is a wood chip bed that has it popping in the spring with my lilacs and my chives and everything, and wine caps are growing in that wood chip bed. That's what we're going to learn how to do. It could be wood chip or it could be straws. Remember, hardwood wood chips or straw. All right, so this is the one. This is the gatekeeper, man. This is the amazing thing. So you can create a whole garden bed that's just inoculated on its own and not plant any plants in it, just have it grow mushrooms. So I had a friend who did that. She left my class and she was like, hey, can I just do like like a 4x4 bed of straw? I was like, yeah, do a 4x8 bed, do a 4x16 bed, do a big bed, because these are a vigorous growing fungi and they will completely inoculate that whole bed. Buy as much straw as you can, coat the whole area. So here's what we're looking for. We're looking for a big heaping pile of straw, at least 6 inches thick. Why? Because that top layer of straw is kind of sacrificial. It dries out. The stuff that holds on to rain and moisture is actually this bottom 4 or 5 inches, and that's where the fungi are going to live and decompose. If you make this too thin, then yeah, then you're going to stunt the growth of your fungi. So another thing that I do recommend is laying down. So if this was you're going to start from scratch, laying down some cardboard. Why? Cardboard breaks down. We all got a bazillion Amazon boxes. You don't need to do this edge log, but you could. And what this does is it prevents native fungi that are in the soil from having immediate access to the straw. By the time your fungi hasn't fully inoculated this straw, that cardboard has now let native fungi possibly work its way in. But now your fungi, the King Strophoria, can totally take control of the bed anyway and defend itself. So straw versus hay, two different things. Could you grow on hay? Yes, you can, but hay has weed seeds in it. Straw is what you want in your garden beds. So I use wood chips in my perennial beds, all right, perennial beds, my orchard trees, I use wood chips, long, a long time to decay, and I use straw in my annual beds, my veggie beds. All right, straw is the byproduct of the harvesting industry. So up here in the north, we have farms that are growing rye. Not so much wheat and everything, but rye is one of those things that's grown up here. There are a few places that have like rice and everything, but ryegrass is harvested. They harvest the seeds from it, and then you get straw. Okay, hay, on the other hand, is just grass that's been growing, and they cut it and they bale it up, and it's got weed seeds in it. It's got grass seeds in it. If you put this in your garden, you're going to be planting grass. So don't use hay. I did it once. Worst mistake in my gardening life. And this is what we're looking for. Remember the worms? My gosh, they're eating that fungal tissue. All right, so all right. So here's what you could do. All right. So cardboard down. It doesn't have to be cardboard. If you got enough straw, you could have a sacrificial layer of straw on the ground and then sprinkle the mushroom spawn on the ground. And so here, I'm gonna escape out of here because that flow state of mind, I'm realizing I didn't really talk about what the heck this is. All right, so what's in the bag? What's in the bag? This is sawdust. All right. Now, there's lots of different mushroom spawns that you can get. You can get grain that's been inoculated, infected with the fungi that you want. I choose to go with straw. Basically, they go down to, the wood mills where they're getting this from, and they're like, hey, when they go through and they burn a whole bunch of oak trees through the mill, they gather up and bag the oak sawdust, not straw. And then, and they work on through some maple, some poplars, whatever. They work through pine. They're going to be bagging up that sorry, sawdust. And then the people who are the mushroom growing people who have labs where they are working in these HEPA filtered negative, positive air pressure filled rooms that don't let things in them. My God, it's like the CDC, like what they're working in to try and make a pure inoculated bag for you. They're injecting this and putting it with like this like little HEPA filtered patch on it. So this still breathes. It's alive. This used to be sawdust. And that's one from the refrigerator, and this is another one. They all look a little different. You see how this one's really kicking off. So this one's a shiitake one. And it's just, why does this one look this way? It's because they kind of let it mature a little bit more before they ship it out. Um, so there are mushroom grow kits. My God, you'll see like North Spore and a whole bunch of other companies. I haven't tried them yet because I like Field and Forest. Not paid by them or anything. It's a mom and pop organization. The number of people who work at the company is like this many or less. You call them up and the real human answers the phone and says, okay, yeah, what do you got? Okay, yeah, no, that's not gonna work. They're honest with you. They don't just sell you stuff. They'll be like, yeah, yeah, you can do that, or no, you can't. Or, all right, here's how we can make it work for you. They taught me how to grow mushrooms one at a time, talking on the phone and ordering. They'll also be like, well, hey, do you want to throw in another bag, because the box is big enough you could throw another bag in, and or whatever, so they'll also help you with shipping. The point is that this is sawdust. What do we do with this inoculated sawdust? We open up the bag and we break this up and we sprinkle it. And so we're sprinkling the sawdust on our projects, or we're taking it and we're shoving it into holes in the logs. We'll see that later on. Sawdust spawn is the best bang for your buck. Um, a bag like that, when I'm buying in bulk, is like $16 a bag. If you're buying just one bag like that, that's a 5 pound bag. Yeah, it's like, I think it's like $25 or something like that. But then plus shipping and all that. Here's the thing: you'll find like little wooden dowels that are inoculated. Worst bang for your buck. You're going to pay more for those, be able to do less of a project, and in the mushroom growing world, you want more spawn so that you start off with a big critical mass that can outcompete the native fungi. You don't want to be frugal with it and be like, oh, well, maybe I stretch this. And all right, so let's get back to the thing. All right. Yeah. Okay, back to the slideshow. Let's go. All right. So there we go. So we're talking about this. All right. So just a simple little drawing here. So let's say you got a garden bed that you want to inoculate. Well, that idea of putting down cardboard or a sacrificial layer of um of wood chips or straw that, down so that the spawn isn't directly on the ground. All right, then we're sprinkling the spawn on. It could be directly on the cardboard, and then bringing in wood chips. Again, 4 inches or more of wood chips or 6 inches or more of straw. Straw is pretty airy and everything. That's why we go a little bigger with it. And that lays on top of the spawn, and then you water it, and that's it. That's it. It's as easy as that. So here's the thing. I took my no-till garden. I took my tilled garden one year, brought in a load of compost, brought in some straw. The kids were like in their naked, like little undies, jumping into the compost, having a ball. I didn't get all those pictures in here, but that's the kid, in their undies, getting ready to jump into this compost and everything. They had a blast. I spread the compost out, and then I spread the straw out. All right, and I turned my tilled garden that I would till every year into a no-till garden, and I did this honestly, man, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, and I haven't tilled it ever since. Um, and okay, so I'm growing my, all right, you got stuff growing in the greenhouse. All of these are transplants that get transplanted into the garden. Remember this, all right? And so in the summer, I got my zucchini plant. Look at this. We got a mushroom growing right next to the zucchini plant, and then I got this. This is a tomato plant, and we got mushrooms growing right at the base of the tomato plant. Why? Why? Well, so I inoculated the straw where fungi breathe oxygen. They breathe oxygen and respirate out carbon dioxide, just like you and me. Remember, they're more related to animals than they are to plants. All right, that's one of the ways that they're more related to us. They breathe in oxygen, and right here, where the tomato plant is popping up through the straw, is where fresh air is getting in. All right, and that's telling the fungi that's in the straw, hey, this is a place where you can pop up and fruit and try to spread your spawn. Oh man, gotta love shiitakes. I mean, not shiitakes, wine caps. Okay, so here's the thing. The first year that I did this, oh my God, this was the year I adopted my brother-in-law's chickens because I have the double coop. Oh my God, that was such a mess. Never adopt anybody's chickens. Let them figure it out on their own. Um, so anyway, so here, I took the straw. You see how I pulled most of it back and I left a little layer here? And look at this. Look at how many bags of spawn I got here. The first year I did this was Mother's Day this year, the year that I did this. And it was like a rainy Mother's Day morning. I did this on a rainy day because as I took each bag and sprinkled it on the straw and sprinkled it on the straw, it was getting rained on. And then I put this straw on top of everything and sandwiched it in. And then I just watered it all in and I let the rain keep watering it in. This corner, this fourth of the garden, ended up getting densely inoculated, and eventually, by the end of the summer, it had fully inoculated the rest of the garden. Here's what I do now. I don't do this many bags anymore. I do 4 bags, one in each corner. They densely inoculate each corner, and it runs, and they meet up together in the middle. And once the whole thing is colonized, that's when fruiting gets triggered. Okay, if the fungi can keep colonizing material, it's not going to fruit until it's fully colonized the material. Then it takes water from the low places, brings it to the high places, and it transfers nutrients. This becomes one living mat that's bigger in biomass than you or me combined. Um, because this bag is genetically identical to that bag, to that bag, to that bag, to that bag. They are all one strain that that genetically adhere right back to each other and become one living organism. So anyway, all right, so with this, how far can you spread this? So one bag should do a 5 by 5 area. That if you go bigger than 5 feet by 5 feet, you're going to spread it too thin and you're not going to get a dense, successful colonization in that area, and it might compete with the native fungi. But if you do it just 5 feet by 5 feet, you'll get a dense colony here that can outcompete everything else that it comes up against, comes up against. All right. So, all right, and here's what this garden looked like the next spring. Look at this. Do you see how we have bare dirt? Why? Why do I got bare dirt patches? Because the fungi completely ate through all of this straw. And they added fed the worms, added nutrients to my garden soil, And oh, look, that second coop is gone. Yeah. All right. Anyway, that was a temporary thing. And so I've got to refresh this system. So the next year I add my compost and I spread new straw out and I now inoculate each corner of it and I put on my sprinkler and and get the whole thing watered nice and deep. All right. Anyway, so I was on a Zoom, all right, looking at I think this was like a Long Island Sound one that I was in. And I was like, oh my God, this mushroom growing thing that I'm talking about, this would totally fit in well with capturing rainwater and capturing runoff. You've got this like little water garden where this downspout empties out. Put wood chips in here, and my God, you've got fungi that are going to be filtering that water and banking it in the ground. Yeah, this totally fits in with that as well. So we've learned how to grow mushrooms in your garden. This is the easiest one because you just sprinkle it on the straw or on the hardwood chips. Again, straw in annual beds, wood chips on my perennial beds, hardwood wood chips. All right. Remember, we're trying to pair up what this fungi has preferred to digest. All right, and that's hardwood species. Now we're jumping into oysters. Okay, so oyster mushrooms. Oh, pretty good on time. Thanks for hanging in, folks. So the two other mushrooms that we talk about are oysters and shiitakes. Now, oysters can be done on stumps, totems, and logs. So we're going to focus on mostly on totems. Every tree has one stump. And so it's kind of rare for somebody to have access to a stump because if we're gathering trees or having tree trimmers drop off logs or wood chips, the stumps are out somewhere else. All right, so, but the same method that you would use for logs, you can use on stumps. It's a drill and fill method. We're going to focus on totems now. Totems is this. It's taking stacks of logs cut into pieces, there's my kiddo, and inoculating them. It's this. All right, man, look at this. This is like a whole dinner plate. That mushroom right there in itself is the size of a dinner plate. Um, because this yeah, yeah, and look at all of those, and look at these that are just popping out. All right, there is a plastic bag down here. That's initially used just to protect the fungi from the native fungi. Look how we got paper bag up here. The other one had cardboard. All right, here's the process. Here's the process of totem. My God, all right, so this is easy. This is a one-person job or more. This uses the bigger diameter chunks of the tree. All right, so we're talking I say 8 inch. When I made this design a long time ago, 8 inches was about as small as I was going. But honestly, I don't make totems with anything less than 12 inches now in diameter. Why? Because I want those rings to be able to stand up on their own. And if it's just 8 inches, it might topple over in the wind. How tall can you make these? I've seen people post pictures of their totems that they made online, and they're like 8 feet tall. But yeah, they've got it supported with like wires and wood and stuff like that. No, 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 no. So just make them about like hip high. Hip high is going to be fine enough. 3 stacks maybe. And now early on I had shown people like what I had been taught, which is you cut a ring of wood and you put this on top. That's not what my customers have been showing me, is that they're like, no, no, no. If you just put paper on top, that's going to protect that top layer, or cardboard on top, that's going to protect that top layer. So this picture of mine is one that I was copying because I was copying the same process of what I'd been taught. And the people who have taken my class have shown me that you don't need this little 2 inch ring at the top. Let's get into it. You need some kind of saw to cut this up. All right. So a chainsaw, you need about a cup of spawn, a handful of sawdust spawn to toss in here. Put a handful of spawn. So how does it start? You start with cardboard on the bottom. All right. So it's a barrier between the earth and the totem. Okay. Does it have to be cardboard? No, it could be newspaper. It could be the plastic bag. All right. So if you put a plastic bag down here, a big old hefty leaf bag down here, okay, and you put spawn right on the bottom on the cardboard or on that bag, and then put your first layer, then your first ring, and then the ring that was next to it, you put another handful and you pancake it in. You smush that spawn and spread it out. The spawn that's towards the edge is going to have a tendency to dry out, but the spawn on the inside will inoculate it from the inside out. All right, and then you just do this handful, handful, handful until you get to the top layer. All right, so I use, I I would gather paper bags, and I would staple paper bags all around the outside of this instead of a plastic bag. I tend to like biodegradable things and not to have plastic anyway, but the people who've taken my class have shown me that you can put a plastic bag on the bottom, then bring it up and around the top and cinch it around the top, but don't pull it tight. Leave this top open so rainwater can get in. Cut some slits at the bottom of the plastic bag so if it gets flooded with rain, the water can leave. All right, the plastic bag is just to stop it from getting dried out by the wind. I usually wrap the whole thing with paper bags or newsprint, and that's what also stops the spawn from getting dried out. This has to go through a process of about, here's the thing, oysters. This is about oyster mushrooms. Oysters are our short game. All right, we can get a fast inoculation with oyster mushrooms within about a month. This is the customer, the person who was in my class who did this about a month later sent me these pictures. And so this, once they unwrapped it, it fruited just like a couple weeks later after this. It had its first fruiting. Let's see. So I
Mark,
saw
how
these.
deep are the rings you make with the chainsaw?
So the bigger the rings are, so this is like a biomass thing. If I had like a huge diameter log, like I've got some tulip poplars out there that are like 4 feet in diameter. I mean, I'd be like, well, how big can I cut them and I can still move them and stack them? I'd be cutting them like pretty thin because it's too darn big. I might not even bother with that. Um, it's the it's not rocket science. We don't have to like overthink it. It's somewhere about a foot ish in height, you know, and as long as they stack on top of each other, you're all set. It's um the more surface area and the more spawn you add to it. So if you were to do something crazy and be like 3 or 4 inches thick for all the rings, what would happen is you would get a faster inoculation, but you'd be burning through more of the spawn. What I'm saying is like you can get away with 12 inches. You can get away with even 18-inch sections. Um, okay, cool. Let's see. Back to that. And there we go. So yeah. So now you can kind of see and see with a little more purpose. Why did this person have a plastic bag? It's to protect their spawn. Now that this is fully colonized and we know it because we can see the spawn, the mushroom tissue here and here. We know that it's fully connected from top to bottom. That means this can now survive without this plastic and just be in the elements. Now it can breathe. And the fact that the customer took this plastic off allowed it to breathe so much oxygen. That's actually what triggered the fruiting on this. So this particular person, they put a brick on top of the cardboard just to hold it down in the wind. It all worked out perfectly fine. It's a great picture to be able to share and everything. And this, oh my God, I mean, oyster mushrooms are delightful. Delightful mushrooms. All right. Now, oysters can be done on logs as well. You know, pairing up the species and everything. This was a pretty good fruiting for me. So shiitakes, man, we all right. This is our old faithful, our dependable mushroom. This is the one that I like to grow because it's like one weekend in the whole year. I do the work for it and that's it. And then they'll fruit. So if I do I've got my system down typically with shiitake mushrooms. Typically, if you read about them, and I've lived it, you have to wait a year to 2 years for the first fruiting. I've gotten my variables down to 6 months. In May, I do my inoculation. All of May, June, July, August, September, and in October, I get the first mushroom. All right, now that's awesome. That's success. And that's what I want to teach you is that I've gotten the variables dialed in. And if you can pay attention to those variables, then maybe you can have your first little shiitake mushroom this fall. And then here's the thing is that it's a bell curve. that first fruiting is only the beginning. They fruit naturally in the fall and in the spring, when the temperatures are at these like optimal, not optimal for this. What is optimal? They shiitakes naturally fruit um, in the fall and the spring when you get these daytime temperatures that are like in the 50s, 60s, but then you get nighttime temperatures that are still in like the 30s or 40s. And dude, that's exactly what we have right now. That's why this log is popping now. Now, if we get weather that kind of stretches like that for some time, this will fruit once and it might fruit a second time in the spring. Typically, you get one fruiting in the spring, one fruiting in the fall. And so, yeah, again, like, and this log is early on in its life, so this is one of its earlier fruitings. It's not very robust in, but as a bell curve, shiitake mushrooms, the logs that you make have a big critical mass. It takes a long time for them to digest that wood tissue, but they live in that log for quite some time, and you can have them fruit for about 3, 4, 5 years. I've had logs that have even fruited like after a sixth year. Now it's a bell curve. That sixth year, that last fruiting is, or fifth or sixth year is going to be just as small as like the very first one. But then there's this prime time in the middle. Here's the other cool thing that we'll see with shiitakes. They are the only one out of the three that we're talking about, and the only one that I know of that we can force them to fruit. We force them to fruit. You'll see the pictures later in their dormant season in the summer. In the summer gets too hot and they don't want to fruit, but we trick them into thinking that a cool fall rain has happened. And that's what we're going to learn. This is why shiitakes are my favorite and they become a staple in my household. While I got the camera on me, just other things. Linked in the presentation are these three books. There's other books linked in there, but these are awesome books if you want to learn more about growing these mushrooms and others. Um, I got my foraging books and everything. We're gonna end up like looking at the tools and everything. Um, Before I go back to the slideshow, this is so what tools were there for the wine caps in our garden bed? This is our hands, man. That was it. We had to have scissors to open the bag, and then we had a bag of sawdust spawn, and we had some straw or wood chips, and we just sprinkled it. What tools did we need for the totems? Well, we needed a saw to cut the totems into sections. And remember, our timeline for those log sections is the same 2 weeks to 6 weeks because it's a primary decomposer. It's that um, the first fungi to infect it. Now, totems, we talked about oyster mushrooms for totems, but remember the list in the beginning? There's so many other mushrooms that do well as totems. Oysters are going to be your easiest one to start with. That's why we talk about these three. These are the gateway mushrooms, the ones that you master, you learn, you get your success with. Don't bother spending money on all the other types until you've had a successful grow with these three. All right, you're going to be wasting your money. One example is reshies. I tried to grow reshies on logs, and here's what happened. In the whole process, they failed on the logs, but they grew in the bed of my trailer. The wooden boards on my trailer, they infected the boards, rotted the whole boards out, had to replace the whole trailer bed. It's just like there's and it's like, why did they fail in the logs? I didn't have the species dialed in, but my trailer bed had the species of tree dialed with the species of fungi. All right, again, master these. So we're gonna get into like inoculation tools like this. We'll see some up close pictures. Yeah, all right. These are our inoculations tools that take the spawn from that bag. We go tap tap tap. I got videos of this. Watch my YouTube videos on like me inoculating logs. I go through how to drill them, and yeah, we're kicking it up to an angle grinder with a drill bit attachment. Well, look at this. This is what you want. You don't want to be like working with your like cordless electric drill. One hole. You want that because it goes vroom, 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 really fast. This is the time where I do want to talk price. Price wise, to get a kit of an inoculator, drill bit thing, and everything, it's somewhere north of $100, but it's definitely less than $200. All right, it kind of depends. Like this, I had to buy this part, but the angle grinder itself I got from a local pawn shop, So like I didn't buy it brand new, or the first one I had was from Ocean State Job Lot. It was like it was a cheapo thing, but it did the job. Okay. Anyway, let's get into log culture because it's the final one. That and that. Good. Okay. So yeah, shiitakes, man, and when they pop, here's the thing: the logs, as they're stacked, they will connect and touch each other and become one living organism. The reason this log, and the logs underneath it are fruiting all at the same time is because I haven't touched them. And they actually, so if I had disturbed them and broken them, there is a connection between this log and that log because I left them alone for so long. This whole stack became one living organism and it fruited all at the same time. You don't have to do this. It's just something that naturally can happen and you get this huge flush. All right. Okay, so this whole cycle, yep, that's the thing that we're trying to do. Now, so this artwork, this is that drill and fill method. Okay, so I'm going to show you pictures of this, but the overall is that this is using the section of logs that is somewhere between like 3 inches in diameter to 8 inches in diameter. Not big enough to make totems, but also not big enough, too big to chip. All right. Critical mass here is that like the thinner the logs, maybe the longer you want to go, so it has a certain amount of biomass. And the thicker the logs in diameter, you can go with shorter, stumpier logs. Okay, so I mean, my favorite ones are ones that are about 8 inches in diameter and just about 2 feet in length. But again, you can't choose all of them. Now, what do I do first? Remember, those logs have been, once the tree has been cut, they've been sitting for at least 2 weeks, and I'm now gathering everything. All right, I soak them. If you're doing a small batch, you can soak them in buckets, you can soak them in wheelbarrows. I don't do that anymore. Okay, I soak them in the back of my trailer. I line this with plastic and fill it with water, and it becomes a tub that I put the logs in. I can do a whole bunch of logs all at once. Now, a one-person job, you definitely can do this as one person, but man, if you could get 3 people, it is absolutely ideal because you can have one person drill the logs out, pass it to a person that fills them, and pass it to a person that is going to cap them. Now, this is an old drawing before, an older illustration where I say wax them, all right? And so waxing is something that you're going to hear about with log culture. The wax is like the plastic bag. It protects the spawn that you're putting in that drill hole from drying out. But I no longer use wax. I'll show you what I use. You can still use wax, all right? And then you put them in a little Lincoln log style here, and you let them just sit. I like to put them on a pallet so that again they're not in direct contact with the ground. Once they're fully colonized and you've seen your first fruiting, once you've seen your first fruiting, your first mushroom on it, the log is completely colonized and it can go right on the ground. The native fungi will not affect it. And so yeah, the drill and fill pattern is something like this. Okay, so we're looking at you're going to drill a line, and then when you drill the next line, you're going to drill somewhere, alternating this, turning the log as you go. Now, this is where I was saying, like the little wooden dowels that people buy, you're going to have to drill like 50 of those holes in a log because those dowels, they're thin. And so you might be like, oh my God, I got 100 dowels. Yeah, well, you'll only be able to do 2 logs, which is fine. I don't want to like put you down. But like, you're just going to be able to do 2 logs. All right. It's really fun when you can get together with friends and you can do a bigger project. Find people who have access to freshly cut wood, load it up, soak it, all right? And so why are we soaking it? Remember that these logs have been sitting for 2 to 6 weeks. They've lost moisture. And look, it's like almost summertime or whatever. That's why we're soaking them. So that when we put our spawn in there that is alive, the spawn doesn't get its moisture pulled away and get stunted. This is again, these are the details that I paid attention to. You gotta soak your logs right before you inoculate them. So just a 12 to 24 hour soak. And so I've learned that on my trailer, if I put a little board here and I lift that board like a little sluiceway gate, I can let the water out gently. Um, I'll show you a picture of what not to do. The entire time that this is filled with water, you can't see it here, but the entire time this is hooked up to a vehicle for overnight while they are soaking. And then this is an example of a setup. The logs come off here, they roll down here to a little stopper. So this is something you can make. You could just use a picnic table, it's fine. And then I've got like a couple little wheels where I can turn and put the logs on while I fill them. There's my drill. This drill is just for actually putting the wooden things together, but this is my angle grinder that I'm using to drill the logs. And this is a filling station for multiple people. My God, you can see the whole setup. You don't have to make something like this. But I put pictures here because I've made something like this. And then I invite my friends over and like, hey, everybody take some logs home. Thank you for your help. And now I've got a big stack of logs. All right. So these wheels are just bolted on so that, things, and I keep my spawn in the cooler here, keep extra tools in the bucket. My gosh. I'm also working with gravity. Things roll, the logs roll down, put them here, they roll downhill here, and then, and then they roll downhill to like the next station. All right. So we got a couple different inoculation tools here. Okay. So this is a $400 tool. You're likely not going to be buying that. You're going to be buying this little handheld tool. The drill bits are worth the investment. Okay. The reason that I recommend Field and Forest Supply is because they have everything that is compatible with everything else. If you go looking for this stuff on Amazon, you're going to regret it. You're going to end up buying a drill bit that doesn't match the whole diameter of the tool that you bought somewhere else because they're all from different suppliers. Stick with one supplier, buy their bits. Now, so here's the thing. This drill bit self-taps into the log, pulls itself into the log, cores it out, and it has a stopper on it. I have used the ones with the stoppers that you put on the like little wooden bits to drill out these holes, and the stoppers they move. This is all one piece, engineered piece. You want this. If you're doing the wooden dowels, again, not going to talk you out of it. You just tap them in, and that's fine enough. I highly suggest, again, bigger bang for your buck is the sawdust spawn. This is what a core looks like as you push it into the log from those coring tools. So, and let's see, that's a stack of logs that have been inoculated. You see how I have them on pallets just to keep them off the ground from the native fungi. And then I'm getting ready. Where is it? I'm covering them. Now, what am I covering them? This is not plastic. All right. What I have found out is that if I leave the logs just like this, you know what happens? The woodpeckers come over and they peck out. They peck out and take all the spawn out of the holes. Now, I didn't talk about what these little white caps are. I'll tell you what they are in a bit. All right, but that's I use that instead of wax now. I don't like having wax and wax fires and everything. Um, so yeah, look at this, man. And what is this? This is basically a breathable fabric. It's like a landscape fabric or a frost cloth. This could be an old sheet. All right. What we want is something that just kind of takes it so the birds can't see it, but still lets rain through, still lets it breathe. I had somebody ask, "Can you just cover it with plastic?" No, you can't, because then when it rains, the water just sheets off the plastic and doesn't get to the logs. As these sit here in the summer, I want to water them intensely but infrequently. And what does that mean? It means I set up a hose here. I run a hose here and I put up a sprinkler that's watering this area, and it's watering it for 6 hours, just this area for 6 hours, but only once a month. All right. Again, you're trying to create this like it's a rainstorm, letting that water soak in all the way down to the bottom of the pile. When am I watering? I'm only watering if we haven't had rain in a few weeks. All right. And then so if it's a drought, I'm going to water. Most summers, I'll be honest, I don't water because most summers we don't have a drought. All right. We had a drought in the fall before, but we didn't have like a drought, in the past summer in a while. So I don't know. Does this convince you to do like log culture? Yeah, look at that. That's like a buckets. All right. Now look at the two different colors here. I'm intentionally putting these two pictures side by side. Now these were grown and enough light got to them that they developed a higher level of vitamin D, just like we get darker and our skin gets darker when we get exposed to the sun and we develop vitamin D through our exposure to the sun, they do as well. These were kept under cover and they didn't get exposed to light, so they didn't get as dark. They're also a little drier. Yeah, I can actually tell that by looking at these. They're a little drier. Some of them, their edges have started to, I got to these a little too late, again, and so, but still pick them, still dehydrate them. And yeah, sometimes I bring the logs around to classes and I sell them to people. So here's the thing. Other pictures of seeing this method. This is what I used to do. Don't do this. Don't. If you're going to turn a trailer into a now, by the way, again, you could use a wheelbarrow. If you're going to turn a trailer into a water tank, don't do this. What I found was I went to lower this tailgate and all the logs came floating at me. All right, you want to leave this attached to a vehicle if you're going to load it up with water. Otherwise, the whole thing can become an unstable mess and those logs can end up on top of you. Don't do it. This is like the very first time that I inoculated logs. I just used a picnic table, the tool, and the drill. You can do the same thing. I have my water bottle, my sweet tea. All right, look at all those shavings from me drilling out the logs and then bringing them here and inoculating them. Yeah, way back, I used to use wax. Now, the research has shown that when you wax the logs, where is it? Where's the picture of the log? When you wax the ends of the logs, they actually did a study on this. So I was waxing the ends of the logs like an idiot. Here's the thing: when rain comes on this, the best way for the log to absorb moisture is through the end grain. It sucks it in like a straw and transports that water in. Yeah, if I'm waxing the ends of this, I am stopping it from being able to pull in moisture. So I no longer wax my logs. Look at how I was also waxing all of these drill holes. Now, if the wax, so what are we using? We're using candle wax, or I'm not wasting bee wax on this. It's like a soy-based wax. Okay, so candle maker's wax. You get a double boiler set up and you get like little daubers and stuff like that, and you daub them on. If the wax is hot enough to burn you, then it will kill your spawn. So again, I don't use wax anymore because it's like it's a pain in the ass. All right, here's my setup now. So my setup now is I can do like 10 logs in a night, in an hour, and then go make dinner for the family. All right, so I have them pre-cut. I let them soak overnight on my little garden cart, and then I made a mini version of this: drill, inoculate with the sawdust spawn with my tool, and cap them. So what we have here are little styrofoam caps. I'm going to escape out of here just to talk about these. So again, Field and Forest is a company that I like as a mushroom growing supplier because they work with Japanese mushroom growers who are the inventors of like these high performance tools. And so this is a tool that when I use it, I can take the spawn, fill it up with spawn, tap, 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 fills up a core of spawn. And then as I push down, it pushes the spawn in and caps it with, with a styrofoam cap. I know, organic farmer using styrofoam. Here's the thing is that there is a bit of efficiency here. Do organic farmers put their veggies in plastic and then sell them to you in the grocery store? They do. It's there's a I can inoculate 10 logs in an hour doing this and I don't have to use wax. For me, that convenience is worth it. So Field and Forest sells these, and I had a 14-year-old who was in my class, and I was telling him, I was like, well, it's a $400 tool. It makes it really efficient. Tap, 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 fill, tap, 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 fill. Versus tap, tap, tap with this and then fill, tap, 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 fill, and putting each core in. This works. This works. I think it's like a $40 tool now. Okay. That 14-year-old was like, can't you just take these and put them on by hand? I was like, you are brilliant. And I said, so now I teach it and I talk about her in every one of my classes. So you could buy these separately, not buy the $400 tool, and just fill them and then have somebody push these. What is the styrofoam doing? It is a cap that's going over the spawn, protecting it from drying out and protecting, because it's sawdust. It could dry out and then just fall out of the hole. If it's moist, the fungi is going to be in contact with the wood and create a proper inoculation. Um, so here's the whole thing: is it's like, yeah, the company says that they've been looking at non-styrofoam things. They haven't come out with anything yet. You know, this is quite a niche market. There's not a lot of there's not a ton of people buying tools and buying this stuff to force them to invent something new when they've got the styrofoam at hand. I've had people say, "Well, could you do like a paper mache? Could you do a da, da, da?" And it's like, go for it, try it, try it. There's probably other ways to protect each little capped spawn. You go ahead and like invent something and be the one who can post it and write about it. Let's go back to sharing stuff. Da, 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 da. We're in the home stretch, folks. So you know, just know that. We're remember that this is the last type we're learning log culture. And okay, okay, that's my current setup. And now you can see why I keep these sleeves of these styrofoam caps next to my like little inoculation gun. Um, Next to this, it's all very efficient, all in one spot. Drill, you know, what you can't see is that I've drilled the log out, and then when I'm done, they all go in here, and I just wheel this whole thing out to like my little pile. This is what it looks like after about 6 months of inoculation. Um, Look at how the drill hole here, the sawdust spawn that was in there was protected by that cap, and over here was protected by that cap. Look at how the spawn, the fungi, inoculated and followed the rings and connected to this one over here, and this one connected to this one over here, following the rings, and then they're working their way into the core of the wood. At this point, this log is ready to fruit and have its first fruiting. Once it fully colonizes the entire log, all the way to the center, it can then have some of those big, massive fruitings. But you know, I've just got these like geeky little pictures here of this cross section. That I took these pictures just to kind of show like what's happening on the inside of the log. All right, shiitake mushrooms, like I said, are the only ones that you can reliably force them to fruit. So, what do you do? In the summer when they are dormant, all right, remember, shiitakes like to fruit in the fall and the spring when it's kind of cool and wet. In the summer, you soak those logs. All right, you take one log, you soak it, flip it over, soak it for, so the whole thing, or just submerge the whole thing. This is just my silly illustration in a bucket. But what do you really want to do? You want to fully submerge this log. Now, here's one thing that's not in the illustration. You want the water temperature to be cold. You want it to be at least 30 degrees colder than the air temperature because you're making it feel like it's a cold rain and that the weather has changed. Cold snap. Think cold snap. So I had somebody from a southern state they were up here. They bought one of my logs, brought it back home with them, and they were no Louisiana. That's where they are, and they're like, yeah, but we don't get cold seasons. Will this work? I said, how about you do an experiment? And they did. They never got their log to fruit naturally, but they got their log to force fruit by just putting a bucket of ice in the water that they're soaking in it. They created that temperature trigger. So here up north, farmers at farmers markets are supplementing and bringing mushrooms to because of this cycle. So here, 12 to 24 hours, you on a Friday night, you soak this. You pull it out Saturday morning and you hit it with a sledgehammer, once at this end, once at that end. That stresses the log and triggers it. So it had a temperature and moisture trigger and now a stress trigger, and then you wait 7 days. And 7 days, this log is popping with mushrooms from top to bottom. All right. And you harvest it. So the next Saturday you're harvesting them. So Friday you soak the log, Saturday you smack the log. The next Friday you soak the next log. The next Saturday you're harvesting from the first log and smacking the second log. And so you can have weekly harvests like this. If you have at least 6 to 8 logs, you can start with one log, and once it's fruited, it can then rest 6 to 8 weeks while the other logs have 1 week, their next week, and their next week. And by the time you've gone through all 6 to 8 logs, that first log you started with can now go back in the cycle and it has digested enough wood tissue to fruit again. Now, remember the whole bell curve. This throws the whole bell curve off. Your logs are not going to last fruiting for 4 or 5 years doing this, they're going to fruit for probably one really good year of you pushing them hard this way because you're burning through that bell curve over the summer. But man, this is an awesome thing. You could, for those people who like mushrooms, you create a whole stack of logs and you can force them again with shiitake. So what you've learned in this class has been how to do the garden beds, how to do totems, how to do log culture. Now that you know how to do log culture, and go ahead and get some experience and some success with it, you could try some of those other mushrooms that when you read about them, they say bury the log. So you do the same thing with the logs, but once it's colonized, you then bury the log. And then you could also learn how to drill and fill stumps and get huge fruitings from stumps. Let me see. I always like to go over this list to make sure that I've talked about everything. So, poor location of the logs. Okay, so that's make sure that you're not putting logs like in a swampy location when they have evolved to grow on deciduous hardwood trees that aren't in a swamp. All right, so like, yeah, so poor location. And can you put them in logs in direct sun? It's like, yeah, but no. It's all about like they can be in direct sun, but it's like that's going to dry the log out. It's going to mean that you're going to need to do some deep soaks of the log. Um, so I like to put them on the north side of my house, or again, yeah, I've got them in the shady edges near my woods. Stretching spawn too thin. We talked about that with the sawdust spawn, but I didn't say about that with the drilling method. If you're doing the drilling method and you drill the holes just a bit further apart, instead of a few 4 inches or 6 inches apart, you're spreading the spawn too thin, making it less likely to fully colonize the log. That is also why I really like Field and Forest's tools. The sawdust spawn puts a huge colony, boom, a huge core in each log. It's much bigger than the little wooden dowels. Again, you'd have to do more wooden dowels, and each one of them is much narrower. I'm a math teacher. Pi r squared times the height. We got the volume of this cylinder is way bigger than the volume of a little wooden dowel. Again, sawdust spawn, go that way. If I didn't soak the logs, they fail. I've had wax fires. When that's another reason why I stopped doing wax, because I had the wax melting, the leaf caught fire, caught the edge of the woods on. No, no, no. All right, wax killed the spawn if it's too hot. My chickens have pecked out my logs. Pain in the butt when they got out. So I keep my chickens locked up, dried out. I have watered too often. Now remember my sprinkler that was set up? There was one, I called up Field and Forest. I was like, man, what's going on? Like, I'm watering my logs. And he's like, well, what are you doing? I said, all right, well, I got a timer on. Every 6 hours, my logs got watered for 5 minutes. He goes, that's the problem. You're creating a rainforest environment by watering them every 6 hours for that chunk of time. You're creating an environment where the native fungi that love a rainforest environment or a swampy environment taking over your logs, and all right. So that's where I said water infrequently but intensely. Try to create a rainstorm. 6 hours of sprinkler on it. Um, but doing that once a month is not going to make a pile that's too wet. Always identify your mushrooms before you eat them. The reason I've had the confidence to teach this class is because shiitakes, wine caps, and oysters are very easy to identify. Don't email me like like email the mushroom suppliers and stuff like that. I get a correct ID before you eat them. But yeah, man, I got videos of me drilling and filling on my YouTube. I got videos of me starting one like this. Watch those videos, and man, if you like this, these are the next step books. This book is exactly everything that I did when this book came out. I was like, oh man, Travis Lynch, man, he wrote a book that's basically what I teach. All right, so but anyway, that's in book form. If you want, it really is like this class. Um, and then this one takes things to a step further. Okay. Oh my God, the micro-remediation here that Trad Cotter's got in here. That's about taking degraded lands and using fungi to get rid of PCBs, heavy metals, and pesticides and herbicides. That's an interesting one. If you've got polluted land, you might want to pick that book up. Or if you want to start your own business, traveling around the places, being the organization that is remediating land and people are paying you the thousands of dollars to convert their land and get rid of chemicals and bad things in their lands with mushrooms. Somebody should start a local group with that. And Mycelium Running is just an awesome book. Paul Stamets has written a lot of mushroom growing books. His books are the ones that I started off with. I will be honest, starting off with his books, it was a little overwhelming. I didn't know where to start. All right. It was like too complicated. This book was a book that like made me feel like, oh, okay, these are some simple things I can do. And after growing, I'm like, oh, this is a great beginner book. All right. So now we're stepping it up, level 1, level 2, level 3. And man, level 4, this is like a whole nother level of growing mushrooms and everything. Again, another Paul Stamets book, and this is another good growing book. That's about it, so it's every now and then I look at the clock. We're a little past time, so you can look at these pictures a little bit on your own. All right. And food forest gardening, these are other things that you can look in there. So escape out of there.
We have
Fine enough to, like,
we
ask
have
questions
two
though.
questions. Vicky
Yeah.
wants to know, could you reuse packing peanuts? That's a good question.
Oh, as like the caps, that's possible. Yeah, and then there's also there's the ones that are, I know, yeah, those packing peanuts that dissolve in water. So that's one where I'm like, huh, but they dissolve in water. Does that mean if I cap the hole and then we get a rain, are they not going to protect the cap anymore? So, um, yeah, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. What I do like, it's like, what I do like about these is that is the same size as the drill hole for this, and the same thing with like the drill bit. These are all, that's again, find one company that you like. I recommend Field and Forest because all their stuff fits together. This is like a nice fit. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what my thoughts are on that. So,
And then can you freeze the mushroom
oh
harvest?
yeah, yeah. Dehydrate, freeze. You can pickle mushrooms. I've never had pickled mushrooms. I know that there are recipes out there. I got enough things that I pickle. It's a whole nother class that I teach. But yeah, I'll be honest. With mushrooms, I find that one of the best ways to preserve flavor and texture is dehydrating. I then like to freeze what I've dehydrated in vacuum sealed bags or in a container, because then it's another layer of making sure moisture doesn't get to them, and and humidity and everything. And then when I'm ready to use them, I got a pouch. I open it up and then I make sure I use that. And it's been so I like to freeze the dehydrated stuff, and I like to reconstitute it, in soups. Um, yeah, of course you can freeze mushrooms. Yeah, yeah. The it's gonna make their texture a little. Same thing with drying. It's in reconstituting. The best texture you can get from a mushroom is when it's fresh. Um, Once you go down the preservation method, you're going to lose texture, and that's why I like to pre-chop them. I like to powder them because then the texture doesn't matter so much. I wouldn't freeze them whole. I would pre-chop them and slice them, or dice them really fine, so that when you are reconstituting them, each one is kind of already small, and then when you start chewing on them, you're not chewing on a big hunk of mushroom. So yeah, yeah. Any
Do
other
we have
questions?
any other questions?
Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Very
Thanks.
interesting. If somebody wanted to buy a log, like, could they contact you
Oh
directly
yeah.
to
Yeah,
buy
come
a
on by.
log?
Come on by. Yeah, yeah. I took them down off of my website, because I'm getting to a low number where it's like, I kind of only want somebody to call me up and be like, "Hey, do you got any?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I got 6. Come on by." Um, I don't like to have them on my website when I can like sell out. You know what I mean? So the last few that are fully inoculated, I still have. And then you saw the logs that I got. I'm going to be doing another batch. I tend to sell them at 2 different prices. If somebody buys them right after I've inoculated them, I tend to sell them for like $20 a pop, $20 a pop, because now you're going to take that baby home. You're going to take care of it.
Water
But
it.
if you buy a log from me in the fall, once they've had their first fruiting, that's now a guaranteed log, and I've guaranteed its success through that whole summer process. And I tend to ask $30 a log, so $20 a log, fresh, ready to go, and you take care of it, or $30 in the fall, blah blah blah. And I have
And
had people like prepay. They're like, like, I know you don't have them now, but like, can I just like prepay? And yeah, of course. I like money at any time. So
how many pounds can you usually get from a
that's a
lot?
tough one. See, you get a if they're fruiting and you get a rain, they're gonna soak up that water, and that's gonna like increase the poundage. It's more of like I look at I look at like a bowl. A bowl wise, you like again the bell curve. When one log fruits and you're picking all the mushrooms off of that log, you can fill up a good sized bowl, or like a if you were to pack them in like a quart jar. Absolutely bigger than a quart jar, probably a half-gallon jar you could get from a log. But again, those first fruitings, you probably just get a handful of like one or two or three mushrooms, enough to make you go, "Oh, I got mushrooms," but not enough to invite the neighbors over. Um, you know, and like you saw with the stacks of logs, that's where it's like a really cool thing. If you got like garden clubs up your way, I keep pitching this out when I teach this class. It'd be really cool for local folks to just buy a kit of all the tools. Somebody houses the kit for the club, and then people just borrow the set of tools. That way, not everybody has to use them. My friend, John and Todd, when they want to do mushroom growing things, they're like, "Hey, John, hey, Mark, can I borrow the set?" Yeah, here you go. Here's the tote. And Todd, oh, yeah, here, Todd, here's the tote. Um, Not everybody needs to own their own set of tools, especially if you're only using it once a year, maybe twice.
And public libraries have library of things, so you can technically check different public libraries in the area to see if they have the mushroom
It'd be a
kit.
pretty niche, like, library of things item, but yeah, that would be like a really cool one to
Because
find. Library of things, and then it has like a recording of my class, boom, in there, and
oh,
that'd be cool. That'd be
I
cool.
like that idea. All right, well, if
All right.
this is last chance, does anybody else have questions?
Thanks, folks. You hung in for an hour and a half of
Yeah.
mushrooms.
No, you're wonderful. And Mark will be back in the fall. We just have to figure out what, but he will be back.
Thank you.
All right, guys, thank you very much. And see you later. Have a
You
good
too.
evening.
You
Thanks.
too.